Well, good afternoon. We're continuing on with our commentary on the book of 2 Samuel. We're today up to chapter 5. The title today is David made king over all of Israel. Then came all of the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spoke, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Also in times past, when Saul was king over us, you were he that led us out and brought us in. And the Lord said to thee, You shall feed my people Israel, and you shall be captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to Hebron, and David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed him king over Israel. After the death and burial of Ishbosheth, representatives of all of the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and gave him their pledge of loyalty and allegiance. We are your blood brothers, they said, and even when Saul was our king, you were our real leader. The Lord said through the prophet Samuel that you should be the shepherd and leader of his people. So David made a contract before the Lord with the leaders of Israel there at Hebron, and they crowned him king of Israel. Now David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah for 7.5 years, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all of Israel and Judah. David had already been the king of Judah for 7.5 years, since the age of 30. He then ruled for a further 33 years in Jerusalem as king of both Israel and Judah, so he reigned a total of 40 years. The king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spoke unto David, saying, Except you take away the blind and the lame, you shall not come in here, thinking that David cannot come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same as the city of David, and includes Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount. And David said on that day, Whosoever gets up to the gutter and smites the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, The blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David, and David built a roundabout from Milo and inwards. Verse 10, And David went on and grew great. David went on and grew great, and the Lord God of hosts was with him. David now led the troops of Jerusalem to fight against the Jebusites who lived there. Who were the Jebusites? They are mentioned in both the book of Joshua and Samuel, and were the descendants of the third son of Canaan, Jebus. And it was given to them partly because the previous occupants of this land was practicing idolatry. They are believed to have occupied this land in the 14th or 13th century BCE, just before the invasion of Canaan by the Jews. But some remained there right up until the reign of David over Israel and Judah. You'll never come in here, they told David. Even the blind and the lame could keep you out. They chanted this because they felt that they were safe. But David and his troops defeated them and captured the stronghold of Zion, now called the city of David. When this insulting message from the Jebusites reached David, he told his troops, Go up through the water tunnel into the city and destroy those lame and blind Jebusites. How I hate them! That is the origin of the saying, Even the blind and the lame shall conquer you. So David made the stronghold of Zion, also called the city of David, his headquarters. Then beginning at the old Millo section of the city, he built northwards towards the present city centre. Then David became greater and greater, for the Lord God of heaven was with him. It was in this old part of the city of David that archaeologists recently found Temple Zero, the temple constructed by Melchizedek, king of Salem. This is a pictorial representation of Melchizedek's temple that has been found underneath the ruins of the existing old city, and there's a video link clicked on the picture that if you want to hear the story in more detail. It's quite an interesting story. I recommend that you look at it. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people's sake, Israel's sake. Then King Hiram of Tyre sent cedar lumber, carpenters and masons to build a palace for David. David now realized why the Lord of hosts had made him king and had blessed him so greatly. It was because the Lord wanted to pour out his kindness and blessings upon Israel, his chosen people. And David took him more wives and concubines out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron. There was yet sons and daughters born to David, and these were the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem: Shammua, and Jobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, Ibhar, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphelet. Now some of those names you know, because you recognize them as Nathan and Solomon, but the others you probably never heard of before. After moving from Hebron to Jerusalem, David married additional wives and concubines and had many sons and daughters. These are the children that were born while David was in Jerusalem: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, Eliphelet. But when the Philistines heard that they had anointed King over David as king over Israel, all of the Philistines came up to seek David, and David heard of it and went down to the hold. The Philistines also came and spread themselves out in the valley of Rephaim. And here we have a commandment from the Lord. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up to the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said, Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into your hand. And then we have a conclusion. And David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there, and said, The Lord has broken forth upon my enemies before me as the breach of waters. Therefore he called the place Baal Perazim. There they left their images, and David and his men burnt them. When the Philistines heard that David had been crowned king of Israel, they tried to capture him. But David was told that they were coming, and went out into the stronghold, so they couldn't get to him. Philistines arrived and spread out right across the valley of Rephaim. Notice that David never goes out to battle without first inquiring of the Lord. Then David asked the Lord, Shall I go out and fight against him? Will you defeat them for me? Notice he didn't say, Will I defeat them? He said, Will you defeat them for me? And the Lord replied, Yes, go ahead, for I will give them to you. So David went out and fought against them at Baal Perazim, and defeated them, just as the Lord had promised. The Lord did it, he explained. He burst through my enemies like a raging flood. So he named the place Bursting, Baal Perazim, the plain of breaches. Verse 22, and the Philistines came up again and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. Commandment of the Lord. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, you shall not go up, but fetch a compass behind them and come upon them over against the mulberry tree. And let it be, when you hear the sound of a going in the tops of the trees, that then you shall bestow thyself, for then shall the Lord go out before thee to smote the host of the Philistines. And David did so as the Lord had commanded him, and smote the Philistines from Geba until you came to Gezer. But the Philistines had not learnt their lesson yet, so they came up against David once again, and spread out their army once again in the valley of Rephaim. When David asked the Lord what to do, he replied, don't make a frontal attack against them. Go behind them and come out by the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching feet in the tops of the balsam trees, attack, for it will signify that the Lord has prepared the way for you and will destroy them. So David did as the Lord commanded him, and destroyed the Philistines all the way from Geba to Gezer.